I'm so excited here talking to Jewel. All the authors love her because she's crazy cool. Had to come back and talk about my audiobook, The Anatomy of a Corporate Lynching, y'all. Look and listen to So Booking Cool with Jewel.
So booking, so booking, so booking cool.
There's so motherfucking cool to listen to So Booking Cool.
Just when you thought it was safe to submit an idea to your employer, hold on. Before you do, read The Anatomy of a Corporate Lynching, Updated Edition, and avoid the Great White Sharks. Available on Amazon worldwide. And hear the audiobook featuring a cast of actors delivering the facts exclusively at fourthfordbooks.com.
Welcome to So Booking Cool, it's Joel B. Today's guest is an artist, creator, author, and speaker. He is the founder of the indie label m.o.u.n Records, which stands for Makings of Unforgettable New Records. During the 90s, he won the John Lennon Songwriting Contest for hip-hop and won the grand prize for R&B. In 2019, he expanded the creative writing he studied in school into memoir with the critically acclaimed title, The Anatomy of a Corporate Lynching. The book, which topped Amazon's copyright law and self-help motivational categories during its release, details the public copyright and civil rights lawsuit between him and Con Edison. His gripping story is now available as an audiobook. Back with us today, he is Charles Ford. Stay tuned for our conversation, only on So Booking Cool.
I'm sorry, Jewel. I thought that you would be finished or you would still be going while I was cutting off the computer so that we wouldn't hear the monitor. So, damn, I missed it.
How are you doing, Charles?
I'm doing fine. Happy to be here.
Yes, happy to have you. So much has happened since we last, talked, had you on the show. So right. What was the pandemic like for you?
Wow, the pandemic was very sheltering, and it kind of enabled me to tap into my creative juices. Like a lot of people, when you can't go out and you're sedentary, you just kind of get into your creative zone.
Oh, okay. What did you do to really show that creativity? Anything specific?
Well, one of the things that I did is I composed the audiobook version of my Anatomy of a Corporate Lynching book, along with the musical compositions that I had put together. And this was something different. This was, because I've been putting music together for some years now, and so I'm very familiar with the whole process in the studio of putting songs together, but I just applied my knowledge for putting songs together to putting together an audiobook. And it was the first time I ever did anything like that.
And congratulations, by the way, on having the audiobook version of the book.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Something that I really like, Charles, is that you continue to let the anatomy of a corporate lynching grow. And I love that.
Yeah, I just kind of, it doesn't stop. As long as you're in the situation, there are constantly things going on. Because a lot of times we don't realize, but we're living history right now. 2-3 years from now, everything that's happening today will be the formation of a story tomorrow. So everything that happens in connection with that experience, it's like a constant documentation that I have to make of it.
Yeah, wow, that is so true. When you continue to share it with people and as more people come across the book, are you having any new discoveries than you did at first? As you talk about the book, do any of the conversations change? Have you noticed anything that you didn't notice before?
Well, the only thing that I noticed since putting out the book and telling the story is the number of people who come to me saying that they've gone through something similar. you know, and had I kept everything to myself, I'd have thought that I was the only one who had a negative experience to the degree that I did. But it was just like, it's always surprising to me how people will come out of nowhere and just ask and begin telling me about their situation and how they could relate to what I have in the book.
It shows that there are still ways to go, huh?
Yeah. But more importantly, it just, I wanted to remind people the importance of being able to tap into your inner strength, because if it doesn't change out there, which you can't expect it to, it can really devastate you mentally if you don't have your thing rooted and stable.
Absolutely. And you do talk about the 4 fears that you had, which was why you initially did not want to tell your story. But those fears, you thought no one would care. You thought that people would think you were looking for attention. You didn't want your story to be seen as entertainment. You know, it's like, this, people are finding out what I've been through, but can they help me? So it just becomes a way like for people to kind of be entertained by your story, and you didn't want your account of what happened to later at any point be used against you. So so Charles, tell us, were these fears that you had all at once, or did they come gradually?
No, it was a culmination of like all of the reasons that I didn't want to do it. It's just something that I compiled when I sat and I really thought of it, because at different times I thought about speaking on it, and then I would be reminded of the first point. Oh, I don't want to be entertaining people who's not going to be able to do anything for me. And then when I would think about it later, I would say, you know what? I may want to act on my anger, and I don't want them to tie this book and what I put in it back to me, you know, because there's that whole motive thing. Oh, you got every reason to want to do A, B, C because of what you said in the book. So then that would discourage me from doing it then. But then an opportunity came up for me to, like, I was being invited to do lectures and stuff like that based on something that I did musically. And people kind of got the impression that I would make a good narrator and things of that nature. And then I was asked if I had a book or something to offer people after I did the lectures that I was being invited to. And I said, nah. I said I started on a book before, but I never finished it. But the book that I started on had nothing to do with what I was being invited to lecture on, because it was this whole situation at work. I wrote the acknowledgement part, like the very beginning of the book, from where you just quoted me saying the reasons that I didn't want to do it. I wrote that whole part, but I never wrote anything beyond that. So they were saying, well, why don't you finish putting your book together? And I was like, wow. Then I had to go back into that whole experience. Mentally, I had to think about everything, and then I just wrote it. I wrote the whole book in like 2 months. I just went there.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Did you know how you wanted to order things when you were putting the book together for those 2 months?
No, I just knew that I wanted to tell the story from the beginning and then move forward so people could see the progression and they would understand it. I didn't want to be all over the place, because then it would be real confusing. I wanted them to see what it was like from when I started with the company, my mindset, and how my mindset changed after my experiences took place within the company. So I wanted to gradually show you how everything evolved into this story.
And things weren't bad during the beginning of your days working at Con Edison, right? You went through different departments. You didn't really love it, but you knew where you wanted to go. One of the things you didn't like was there was a time when you had to carry as much as $1,400 on you in cash. But just
that was, I didn't like that. That's when I was I was doing bill collecting. Like, we would go around and knock on people's doors and tell them, look, you owe X amount of dollars for your light bill and gas bill. And if you don't pay X amount, then we have to cut your services. They called it collect or cut. And I just didn't like that, walking around with all that money. I mean, we was in plain clothes, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. You get in tune with a lot of people's domestic situations and their stories and their hardships, and it could be a little overbearing. You go and then I'm standing there with a tool bag, and the guy with the paperwork, he's asking questions of, you got to pay this amount, or we got to cut you. And she's standing there with her two little children, and she says, well, I don't have nothing but $25, and you saying I got to pay $200 of the $500 I owe, and I can't do it. And then you have to go and cut their service off. And I just didn't want to have to do that.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm sure others get that too.
Yeah.
But how was the work environment as well at that time?
Which time?
Before you had the idea for the slogan and then you sent it.
Well, I had my mind on getting out of the department, but it was okay because I was in the field. I was a field representative. I would be out dealing with a lot of customers and restoring their service after they paid their bill from getting their service turned off. And in a lot of ways, it was a culture shock. And I was told that it was going to be a culture shock because of the things that I was going to see while I was in the field. And I was working in Harlem at the time. But, it was okay. I learned a whole lot being out there. But I knew that that's not where I wanted to remain. I didn't want my career to stay right there while I was in that company. I did want to progress and move somewhere else. And when an opportunity arose for me to do so, I did. Yeah.
When you came up with that very creative and genius even slogan for the company, did you also see that as a way of possibly advancing your career when you had that idea?
No, I just, the creative part of my being was external. I didn't look at it as internal. I was just doing something creatively for the company that I was used to doing primarily outside of the company, because I'm a music guy. I'm musically inclined. So I just said, let me bring something here. Let me see if I can lend something to the company that they would appreciate. But I wasn't looking at that as a way to advance within the company, because they sell electricity and gas. What do they know about music? So I didn't even think of that. And what's interesting about that is I actually wrote a jingle as well.
Oh.
With that slogan that I come up with for the company. And if they liked the slogan, then I was going to introduce the jingle that I wrote. But they never replied. And I just learned about what they were doing with what I submitted like a year or so later via a company email.
That is just, wow. You felt disregarded and disrespected, and many of us would agree that that is exactly what was happening to you. In those moments, as you were waiting to get the response after sharing your creative idea, was there anyone who you could turn to?
Well, I wasn't thinking of turning to anybody at that point. I was just waiting for them to respond. And when I didn't hear from them after a week, and then a month and 6 months had gone by, I forgot about it. I didn't even think in terms of turning to anybody, because there was no conflict. The conflict came once I saw what they were doing with an idea that was a replica to mine. And by that time, I was in another department. And once I saw that, that's when it was like, okay, who do I turn to? Where do I go?
Yeah, so did you have to go through it alone? Because you went through some things, like even at one point, your hair was falling out, you were stressed and everything.
Yeah. I mean, I went through it. I was prepared to do it alone. I just needed to know the correct people to go to assist me, because you don't really know the law and how these things work. So I knew I had to go somewhere, and I reached out to a couple of entities in the very beginning, but I was always determined to go through with this regardless on my own. It was nothing like nobody could tell me, you know what, don't do it. Don't do it. I would let it go and freeze me in my tracks. Nobody could do that. In fact, everybody that knew or learned about what had happened, they actually encouraged me to do so, to pursue ratifying the situation and going at the company for doing what they did.
Yeah, when you began to get justice and you went to the media and, pursued legal action, did you think that things were going to get rocky at work, or was it a question of, I didn't know it would be this bad?
I didn't care. I really didn't care. When you get to a point where you're that mad about an injustice, you won't care what the outcome will be. You will just try to make the most strategic move possible, but you won't try to or allow yourself to be discouraged from doing something. So I was in the mindset of like, you know what, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be, because it bothered me that much that they would be that arrogant and nonchalant about what was going on. You invite me to come down with an idea. You invite me to come down. I take it to you, and then you do what you did, and then you're gonna act like nothing happened. I couldn't do that. I couldn't walk around acting as if nothing happened. I'm not wired like that. Some people are. They have a bigger capacity to deal with stuff like that, and I can't.
So that explains how you were able to still get through it and rise above it, with you being denied trainings, not getting your vacation time, emails going around labeling you as problematic. So that explains it, because you were like, if this is what it's going to take to get justice, then I will endure it.
Yeah, because I knew what was going on when I was in the middle of it, and they were retaliating against me. I knew that that's exactly what it was. It was retaliation. I knew it. So it was like, okay, y'all are plotting, so I'm gonna plan on my side. I don't know what it is you're doing. I don't know what your conversations in your little boardrooms and conference rooms are about me that I knew was taking place. But I just knew that I was going to do something. I had to plan my strategy on the side. And that can be very fearful for a lot of employees in the middle of something like that, knowing that they're putting together something, they're campaigning to get you withdrawn or taken out of the company and terminated. When people know or even fear that something like that could be going down, it kind of makes them back away from what they're doing.
I also want to get your thoughts on people who they don't like what they're going through at their job, but what do you think people should do? Do you think people should stick it out until they find the next job, or they should just say, no, your peace of mind is what you should choose?
Your peace of mind, because stress is something that can affect you so bad that you might not even make it to your next job, because it can kill you. It really can kill you.
That's not a lie. Have you known anybody who has gone through that, where it got so bad that it was risking their health?
Well, suicide is the biggest example of a health risk. And you hear of so many people killing themselves because they don't have anywhere to turn, or, they turn to some vice like drugs, because it's an inner battle that they can't seem to win, and it's taking over them. You know, having or feeling like you have nowhere to turn, it can be devastating. So everybody's situation is different. If you can suppress your anger enough so that you can take care of your family, that's the route people go with it a lot of times. So it depends on the situation that everybody is in. If you have different means of making money, then you don't have to necessarily put up with one situation. Like someone who doesn't have many means of income. So it's just it's an array of options and ways that you got to think on it and consider.
What was the dynamic between you and your coworkers before these things started to happen, in terms of you trying to seek like justice and legal action for them taking your idea?
Oh, I was fine with my coworkers. I got along well with my coworkers.
Okay, good. But did anything change, or you still had some of those coworkers that you still got along with once all of that was happening and they were trying to retaliate against you? The job was retaliating against you.
Well, at like later on, when it started getting thick and serious, you kind of saw how your coworkers wanted to kind of keep away, because and I understood it. I totally understood it. They felt like if they said anything that could have been deemed on my behalf, that it could jeopardize them in some way, jeopardize their employment. So I totally understood it, but I never looked to involve anybody that deeply in my situation, because I really didn't need anybody to get involved like that, because I knew my situation better than anybody.
You also talk about Johnny Cochran in the book, who you described as being your idol. Where did that come from?
Where did what come from? Him being
him being your idol.
Oh man, Johnny Cochran, guys like Johnny Cochran and Mtume, the legendary Mtume. These guys showed me that a Black man can speak his mind intelligently and articulately, and articulate it in such a way where they were able to reach people, make their point, and still be what they were: an attorney, a musician, in the face of the masses. Because I was under the impression that, at an early age, that you couldn't say things that riled people up. You didn't want to ruffle any feathers. But they showed me that you don't have to care about ruffling feathers as long as you represent the truth. Then you can go forward and be proud and hold your head up. So yeah, when I saw what Johnny Cochran did for OJ and how he represented him and how he represented Michael Jackson and things of that nature, it was just very inspiring for me. People used to tell me early on, it's like, oh, you should be a lawyer. I just never wanted to be a lawyer, but I guess that part of me was drawn to Johnny Cochran, and then getting a chance to meet him was like, I totally wasn't expecting that.
What was he like when you met him? And of course, given the circumstances, but still, what was that like, meeting him?
And it was like that Starburst commercial or that Skittles commercial. I forget what it was, where, it's a lot going on. You hear a lot of stuff. And then when he comes in the room, it's like everything just silences. You don't hear anything. It's like, I'm looking at Johnny Cochran. I couldn't believe it. He was very direct. He was cool. He spoke his point, and it was just so cool meeting him, shaking his hand, and I wanted him to represent me. when I walked out of that building, I was just like, yeah, it's on now. I can't wait till he takes on my case.
He ended up being too busy to take the case.
Yeah, he was working the Club New York shooting that happened with Sean Puffy Combs at the time. And he was representing him, and that case seemed to be going on forever. So that's the reason that I wound up with another attorney.
Okay. Yeah, I know what case you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was in the club, right?
It was the club shooting.
The club shooting, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was the one where Puffy was with J-Lo and Shine and all of that whole situation.
Would you make a movie about what you went through?
You know, this keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. And the answer is yes, I would. I would definitely make a movie because I keep hearing that. I wasn't thinking about doing one, but yes, I would.
You should. Yeah. So in the book, you definitely let us know that you did not disguise anyone's names or any of that. So would that be the same for the movie, you think?
Well, I don't know how that works. What the rules or regulations are pertaining to my story or a story when it comes to putting it on Broadway or doing a production like a movie. But if it allowed me to keep the story as it is in the book, then I keep it the same way, because that is a part of the story, is my truth.
Would you want to play yourself?
No, I'd have somebody else play it.
Okay, and you'd be
I wouldn't need to do it. I would just need to have somebody who could act the part and be convincing. And I would, speak with them and make sure that they understand the sentiment that I'm trying to convey during those particular scenes that we're shooting, and put them in that frame of mind that I was in when I was going through it, and make sure that they could get that performance or give off that performance that I'm looking for.
Do you imagine that you would keep the same title of the book as you would for the film version?
Yes, I would. That's the only way I'm seeing it now. Unless somebody could convince me otherwise, and why a different title would work. I don't really see a need to change the title, because usually movies are based off of books. Waiting to Exhale was a book, and they didn't change the title when they put it in the theater. Raising in the Sun, To Kill a Mockingbird, all of these books that were made into productions, they kept their title. So I don't know, but you know how it is. Sometimes you got people, they will probably want to get rid of the word lynching. Why?
It's a great title. And did you have
Thanks.
No problem. Did you have any runner-up titles before going with The Anatomy of a Corporate Lynching?
No. What was funny about that is I knew the title that I wanted. It just came to me just like thinking about what I had gone through. It was like a lynching, and being that it was in a corporate setting, it's a corporate lynching. And I wanted to tell the construct of how they were trying to put this lynching together. And the anatomy is a body that is made up of different parts. So I wanted to show the different parts of this lynching corporately that was put together against me. Hence the anatomy of a corporate lynching. And then when I told my artists briefly of what I wanted, of what the plot of the book was and what was going on in the story. He was like, you know what? I think I know what I want to do. I'm gonna have a face with a necktie that looks like a noose. I mean, he said it right there, and then he put it together, and it was just like the first take on both the title of the book and the illustrative aspects of the cover. First take. He nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who is this artist, by the way?
His name is Christopher Clark.
Okay.
Yeah, Clockwork Entertainment. And he's on Instagram at Print Jurisdiction. Holla at him.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
That is awesome, wonderful work.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you guys just worked well together with that in terms of the vision.
Yeah. I pretty much have him doing all of my artwork. Like whenever I come up with an idea, and he just does it so well. You know, he takes my ideas and he puts it on the canvas and he drives the point home. He's just that good. He's done like several books. He's done several books, like the cover, the artwork to several books.
Okay, wow. Yeah, definitely have to check him out.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to send out an email, which makes so much sense that you had released a book about your experience, and you were not really able to do that. Once you did talk to some coworkers about your book, and then you had a lot of people coming up to you, why were you surprised though?
Because I'm only used to people speaking to me who know me, you know, and so to go into a room and you see, you know, several faces that you've never met before, and you sit with them for some kind of training course. And then when lunchtime comes, one of those people who you were sitting in the class with for 3 or 4 hours, who've never said anything to you, when they come up to you and then they tell you that they read your book, that's surprising. I was like, wow, really? So you saw me all this time and you actually knew my story. That's surprising.
Okay, I see. I see what you mean. Because I more so was thinking of it as though saying, well, of course, they're going to talk about it and say, did you see this? Did you hear this? Did you know about this? So in my mind, but like with you explaining it in that way.
Well, I don't think that they would say that while the subject is around, like meaning the artist or the author is around. When the word gets around, the creator is usually not there amidst the talking and the conversation. They're usually not there. It's just like an artist when they have a song on the radio. They don't get to hear what everyone is saying when everyone is listening to it on the radio. You know, you don't really know what people are thinking because you may be right there and you hear your thing on the radio, but you don't see the response of the people until maybe you go and you do a concert or something, and now you get to see everybody's reaction at one time who's familiar with your work. And so I guess it's similar in that way to what you were talking about. Like, you know, when I go into some room or space where people who are familiar with my book, now I get to kind of hear what they think about it because they know about it.
And speaking of books and Fourth Ford Books, I love that name, by the way. Can we expect more books from you?
Yeah, I have a couple more books inside. Yeah, most definitely.
Can you reveal anything about any of those books that you have in mind, or you want to keep it to your chest and still kind of think about it?
Well, at one point, I feel like I would want to do an autobiography and just talk about my life when it matters, if I accomplish some kind of feat, like any artist, you tell a story and you reflect on what your life and your path was. At some point down the line, I certainly have a story, but right now I'm just building that story. I'm living it. I'm living the story that I would write in some years.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I have a book that I've completed that's going to be coming out within the next 5 or 6 months, but it's related to my musical endeavors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it fiction?
It's about relationships.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think people are going to respond to that? Are you thinking that, people are really going to relate to this one too?
Well, based on what I've seen so far and the reviews that I've gotten from just the people who are previewing it, they're going to love it. The book is called The Things a Man's Supposed to Do, a conversational menage a trois. And it's between a woman, her ex, and her next. They all come together and they have a conversation. And it's pretty interesting.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So definitely look out for that. And it's under my artistic moniker, Chas Bronxson. And I did it with Gianna Garrell, film director, producer, writer. Is something you'll see. She's a great writer.
Wow.
So between her and me, you'll see. You'll see. I'll let you know when it's dropping. We plan on putting that out for Valentine's Day. It's a lot to that. There's a music video that's already been produced. It's just waiting to be dropped. And there's a song, The Things a Man's Supposed to Do. And I have like 5 different languages. I do it in 5 different languages.
Was that important for you to put it in 5 different languages? And if so, why?
Because I saw the response that I got from the English version. And I was like, man, it looks like a lot of women will be able to relate to this. So I wrote it in addition to English, I wrote it in Spanish. I wrote it in Japanese. I wrote it in Creole and German. I also did a Russian version, but I put that off. I'm not putting the Russian version out. But those additional 5 languages.
Wow. Okay. That's very impressive. Now, why are you putting the Russian version to the side?
Because of everything that's happening between Russia and America right now. I don't know. I figured, there's too much going on with that. And I probably wouldn't be able to communicate with Russian women anyway. And if I went over there to promote it, I might wind up in jail for 9 years.
So do you have any thoughts of what's been happening with Brittney Griner?
I think it's very unfortunate that she is in the predicament that she's in. I feel it's obvious that she's a political prisoner because this is all politics. And the Russians are using this to their advantage to get the outcome that they want. They want to get some of their people back, so they're going to use her to do it.
Charles, what do you want people to know about you as an author?
Wow, that's an interesting question. That I'm honest.
I love that. It is what it is. You said it perfectly right there. I'm honest. And I want to know your thoughts on what makes the best stories, because you were talking about your story is still in the making, but there will come a time when you feel your story about everything should come out. So what makes the best stories?
I think when the reader can sense your honesty, and your authenticity, and you're believable, and they can relate to you. I think those make the best stories.
Now, are we just talking nonfiction, or this applies to fiction as well?
Well, nonfiction, because with fiction, you have to be able to be creative and go outside of the perceived truth. In my mind, you have to be able to make a story out of nothing. And if you're making a story out of nothing, then clearly it didn't happen. But you're able to make a story and make it connect with people. Mm-hmm. It's just my opinion of that.
Okay. And how can somebody be believable on the page? Like, what have you read where it was like, this is believable, this is honest?
First book that comes to mind when you say that is the autobiography of Malcolm X. That book, that was the first book that I read that just like, it spoke to me. It spoke to me. Another one was Black Robes, White Justice by the legendary Judge Wright. I don't know if you know him, Bruce Wright.
Bruce Wright?
But yeah, that spoke to me because of the honesty, the realness of it. I think as long as you are telling the truth and you represent your truth to where it resonates with the reader, you'll be successful.
Is it worth sharing something with the world if you believe that it is going to maybe help people?
Yes. Yes.
And the attorney, the woman that suggested that you should tell your story because it can resonate with people not only locally, but also globally, do you know how she has responded to the anatomy of a corporate lynching?
No, I remember since I mentioned her in the book, I went and I showed her that the book was out. You know, I let her know that because of her encouragement, I actually went through with it and I put the book together. And that was the first edition. I haven't informed her that the updated edition and audiobook has been put out. But I remember when I told her about it the first and only time, she was talking about inviting me to come and speak at her church or something like that. And that's the last that I've spoken with her. But I might have to reach out to her and just let her know that her name is being circulated once again, you know, in the audiobook. I try to let everybody know who inspired me to put it together. If I'm mentioning them in the book, that I mentioned them and that is going around. Something is going around with their name in it.
And you mentioned, Charles, that you wrote the book in 2 months. What was the time frame for putting the audiobook together?
I think it took about 8 or 9 months. Yeah. Because I had to narrate it and then I had to put together the cast who was gonna tell the story. And then, you know, I had to direct them so that they knew how to do the performance. You know, they gotta know, okay, do I do a vocal inflection here, this way, or do I do it that way? You know, I had to make sure that they did it exactly the way that it happened and the way that it was said during the depositions of all of the people mentioned in the book. And so that's a process. That's a process. It's one thing to just sit there and freestyle, just write, you know, just from your mind and have it conveyed through your pen onto paper. But it's another thing to be the narrator. You got to write it all out. I mean, it was written out, but then the the additional part of the book had to be written out. So you're writing the book, and then you're engineering the studio sessions, and you're recording all of your parts, and then you're engineering the sessions for everybody else. So it was a process. It took a lot longer than it did to just write the book. But it was a labor of love. It was fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had fun doing it.
I had fun putting it together only because of the musical aspects that I'm familiar with being in the studio. But I'm not gonna lie, reading my parts, it just got me mad all over again, because I'm actually living it. You know, now I'm in the middle of it, and I'm telling the story as if I'm right there again. And it just brought back up old anger. So, you know, besides that, yeah, everything else was fun, putting it together and doing the leveling and, you know, getting it mastered, putting all the vocals together. And that was a fun process.
The performances were excellent, by the way. That was a great job. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
no
you.
problem. Props to you for directing that, and props to the actors, because their performances were top notch. Yours too.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. You know, when you
Yeah,
go
no
through that much work to get that kind of response from people is great.
I can only imagine. And knowing that you do have your artistic side, well, you're artistic in general, but your moniker, like you said, Chas Bronxson, you can't.
It's actually Chas Bronxson. I don't know. Let me ask you this: Did you know of it was a actor named Chas Bronxson? Are you familiar with him?
We talked about this the first time. Yeah, and you know, you had to coach me on how to say it because I wasn't saying it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just think of CHAS as an abbreviation for Charles. I'm helping you. I'm saving you 3 letters to have to speak.
Okay. Right.
Chas Bronxson.
It's not Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could, when listening to the audiobook, it's like, yeah, I could definitely hear the Chas Bronxson.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was definitely an asset, knowing how to work my way around the studio, putting this audiobook together. I think if I didn't have that under my belt, knowing how to do studio sessions, it would have been rough. So I'm glad that you picked that up.
What advice do you have for anyone who's putting together an audiobook right now?
Expect for it to be a long process. And if you're doing it all by yourself, as I did, don't get discouraged. For instance, like if you're narrating your book and you do 12 pages, don't get discouraged when you look at all the rest of that book that's remaining for you to do. Because at a certain point, it seemed like I wasn't getting through the book, Jewel. I'm reading, and then I look and I'm like, damn, I got this much more to go. It seemed like I was never gonna finish. And early on, it got to the point where I realized that I'm not gonna do all of these different parts by myself. When the Con Edison woman attorney is talking, I'm not gonna be up there saying, yes, so Charles, what did you say? I said, nah, I gotta get somebody to play that role. So it's gonna be a process. If you're gonna have different characters speaking, and you're not gonna wanna do that all by yourself.
Okay. I even also like the sound of the typing.
Yeah. To kind of denote that the person was typing an email. Yeah. That's what I was saying. I just put my music producer's hat on and just went there with it. I knew it was gonna be a little unorthodox, and it wasn't gonna be a typical audio book. but I wanted to draw the listener in, and I wanted the listener to feel like they were there, and I wanted them to understand what was happening. So you have all of those, those little side, those little effects, sound effects that I put in at certain points in the audiobook.
Can we expect more music from you?
Yes. I just finished shooting 3 new videos, music videos, that I'm in the process of editing. And then you got the Things a Man's Supposed to Do video that's coming soon. So yes, if you're interested in seeing any of my previous work, it's up on YouTube, on my channel, on m.o.u.n Records, on YouTube. And it's a song I did called Pretext. That's the one that caused me to be invited to do lectures. And from the lectures, I put together this book.
And on that note, Charles Ford, aka Chas Bronxson. Hey, I love how you just tied that in together. That's like a full circle moment, going back to how we started the conversation with the lectures and how that led to you writing the book. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come back. It was very cool, no pun intended. It was very cool to have us do this visually, and for any of the listeners, because by the way, that the first interview for the book, like, that continues to get a lot of attention too. So guys, if you probably seen him on other platforms, because he's been promoting his book on other shows too. This is the man right here, Charles Ford. And how can people keep up with you?
Well, thank you for having me on your platform again, Jewel. I always love chopping it up with you. And people can contact me or reach me on my Instagram page, which is at Chas Bronxson, CHAS Bronx Son, SON. And I'm on Facebook as well. I'm not as active over there, but I'm on Facebook under the same name, CHAS BRONXSON.
Yes. I always love chopping it up with you as well. And congratulations on all that you're doing. And I can't wait to chat again, and looking forward to the next book.
Okay. And I will certainly let you know when it's going to be released. And it has an audiobook completed for that one as well. So it was a lot going on during those 9 months, during that whole COVID period.
Yes, like you said, you were very creative.
Yeah.
The ideas were flowing. Oh yeah, and also the music video too. Excited for that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you so much as well to all the viewers. Until next time, so booking cool.